At Lincoln Nutrition and Fitness, home of CrossFit Lincoln, our passion is positively impacting and changing lives by creating a strong, brave, healthy community through coaching and education. We talk about nutrition, fitness, mindset, and more. From the Row Flicks studio, it's Phil Kniep, Paul Konarski, Emily Breedy, and I'm Aaron Perkypile. Welcome to CrossFit Lincoln Connection. Well, welcome everybody to CrossFit Lincoln Connection. I'm Aaron Perkypile. Excited to welcome my guest, Collin Caneva. Collin is a member at Lincoln Nutrition and Fitness, home of CrossFit Lincoln, and he also has done a lot of things in his life. He knows everybody in the Midwest. I think he's best friends with everybody in the Midwest. Not everybody.
Yeah, I think there's about probably 6 or 7 people out there that are not my best friends.
but he's friends with just about everybody, and I'm excited to have you here. Thanks for joining us, Collin.
Man, I appreciate it. I wish we were at stand-up desks so you could see how I stand today, like a wobbly little deer after Coach Austin put me through the rigorous leg routines that he did this week.
Yeah, 2 days in a row, especially.
2 days in a row, and I think we even did some Tuesday. Anyway,
yeah,
I digress on the old. Shout out to Austin's leg blaster.
Yeah. So I'm excited to have you here because I know that, like I said, you have experienced a lot of life.
Uh-huh.
You spent some time in the Navy.
Yep.
And we're kind of a jacked up dude in the Navy.
I wouldn't
jacked
say
up. Jacked. Like you were fit.
Yeah, I was pretty fit.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not jacked up. Now you're jacked up.
Yeah, yep. Now I think we call it jagged up. I'm a little jagged up, but I'm working on it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's our role. So.
And then you have owned at least 2 businesses that I know of.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe more than that. I don't know.
Yep.
And now you are flying as much as humanly possible for you.
Every
day if possible.
Every day if possible.
And then you have a podcast or a show on Carbon TV.
Yep.
Called Old Green Plane.
That's right.
So we're going to talk about all those things.
Sweet.
Let's start back at Navy time. Back in the Navy, why'd you end up enlisting in the Navy?
Yeah. So, my dad gave me 2 choices: college or Navy, and he said, "I'm not paying for your school, so if you want to do that, you can go into debt, or we're a military family, a lot of cousins." Brother, dad, military.
Yeah.
So he gave me the option, and he just said, you can go into debt or you can go serve our country. And there's nothing you can't do in the military that you can do in civilian life. So yeah, he was right. I mean, I wanted to be a pilot. I went in and, I didn't make it as a pilot, so I worked on the flight deck of the USS Saipan, did that, and served out my term, and it was, went around the world. It was just a great time. I love it. I encourage all our youth kids to at least explore it.
Yeah.
I hear those words every day. There's nothing you can't do in the military than you can do in civilian life. Especially now in today's military. I mean, kids are going in and they're basically playing video games, flying drones, and protecting our country, right? So, and I think a lot of youth need that structure in their lives.
What was the coolest place you saw while you were on the Saipan?
So coolest place I saw, Greece. That was cool. Obviously, the tropics are always cool, but they were so touristy that. I think the Greece, Italy, Israel was really cool. People don't realize how cool Israel is. I was in during the Gulf War, and I was med based, so that's killed the East Coast. So we did the Mediterranean a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What port did you drop in? You're like, I'd never want to see that place again.
Northern Africa.
Okay.
Yeah. So
a little rough.
Yeah, it's just pretty desolate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after the Navy, what happened next?
So it's kind of an interesting story. It's not really interesting. It's more entertaining. It was before cell phones, so I call a friend of mine. Actually, I called his mom. You know how like we used to remember phone numbers?
Yep.
So I call his mom, and I think I still remember their damn phone number. And she was like, yeah, well, Jason's not at Vermilion anymore. He is in Lincoln, Nebraska. And I was like, Lincoln, Nebraska. So she gave me his phone number. And I called him and said, hey, man, I'm on I-90 cruising across. I should be through Illinois today. And I was thinking about, dropping in and seeing. He goes, well, man, Lincoln, Nebraska is only about 4 hours south. Lies. 6 hours later, I hit here. And, we hung out at his house, and I was going to run home to the Black Hills and then head back to the East Coast and go to school at Virginia. And so I hung out here for a night, and that night turned into another night. He was like, man, why don't you just apply for school here just to see?
Yeah.
So with the GI Bill and everything back then, it was like I got in-state tuition right out of the gate. So I went to school here, and my thing was always to go to school here, hang out here, and then get the hell out of Dodge.
Yeah.
3 weeks into school, I met my Spanish tutor. She was very attractive, and so I ended up, 25 years later, we're still married and have 4 kids.
That's what's up.
That's what's up. I can't speak a lick of Spanish, but I've got a great wife out of the deal.
You need tutoring every day, is what you're saying.
I do.
For the rest of your life.
And that's 100% legit. If anybody needs tutoring, it's this guy, right? So, yeah.
So what'd you major in school?
So I started off in international business, quickly changed to construction management. It was during that time where I had this, and a lot of people have heard this story, but I knew I didn't want to work for anybody else.
Yeah.
And so I bought a dump truck. I took a student loan even though I had a GI Bill, and I used that student loan and bought a dump truck. And it was pretty funny because I used to go to class and I would park that dump truck in front of the engineering college, and I would turn on the flashers and run into class. And one of my teachers figured it out, and I think his name was, that doesn't matter, it was one of our professors, but he said, dude, listen, man, you can't be parking your dump truck out in front of school. I was like, I've been working on this road for 2 semesters, Jack. Right? So, yeah, I did that, and then I was hauling gravel to a builder in town, and he asked if I knew anybody that did concrete. Well, I worked my way through high school and even after high school a little bit for a friend of my dad's who owned a paving company. And I was, well, yeah, what do you need? And he told me he needed a patio, so I poured it. And then he was like, hey, would you do our basement? Well, yeah, I'll do it. So then, next thing you know, I had a concrete company.
Yeah.
And, so that was pretty wild.
So you were still in school and you'd started basically your concrete company.
Yep. I started my concrete company. I was a junior. And as soon as we kind of took, I suppose you could say, I should say I started when I was a sophomore. It really started to become a true business when I was a junior. And so there's another funny story. I came home, and Angie and I were married now. And I came home, and she was like, what the hell are you doing home so soon? And I was like, I graduated. And she was like, you what? I was walking into calculus and was like, what the hell am I doing? I'm sitting here paying tuition, knowing I'm not going to go work for someone else.
Yeah.
So I just made the decision right then and there. I dropped the door handle, turned around, got in my dump truck, and made the decision. Home. Yep, drove home. That was my turning point where I just kind of put my flag in the ground and said, I own my own company. And
that's that Kanye West song. Oh, you graduated? No, I decided I was finished.
Yeah, that was it, right? And so, and Angie being the always supportive person she is, she said, all right, let's do this thing. And so we did. And, it's pretty interesting because here I was 22, 23 years old, probably 23, 24, I don't know. But anyway, in both feet, man. And I'm that type of guy. When I go into something, I jump in both feet. And, I had one morning about 4:00 in the morning, I was up all night long finishing this garage floor with all these drains and stuff. And my phone rings at like 4 a.m. And I was like, who in the hell calls me at 4 a.m? So I answered it, and it was Boyd Batterman from Sampson Construction, and he said, "Hey, you just poured this garage floor. It looks great. Would you be interested in bidding this job for me?" I said, "Boyd, man, it's me and 3 dudes that I can, I don't even know half the time if they're going to show up." He said, just come down and visit with me." So it was Boyd Batterman and John Sampson, the Sampson Construction, that really kind of took me under their wing and taught me how to bid jobs, taught me, they just taught me so much. I don't know if those two have ever even heard how thankful I am for them for all they taught me. But that kind of took me from amateur league to now we've got a true business.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
How long did you run that business?
We had it for a little over 12 years. We ended up and sold the company to a couple other companies here in Lincoln, and a larger company bought some of our bigger stuff. And looking back, I remember, so that was in 2009, and 3 months later, the economy just tanked, and I thought, wow, the luck of it. But now I look back, and I kind of wish I still owned the company, because after 2009, it would have been like Forrest Gump when he's the only shrimp guy left, because all these paving companies had failed during that. And holy cow, I'd have been riding my shrimp boat, or i.e. paving machine, made it.
Lieutenant Dan.
Yeah. So sold that, took a couple years off while I tried to figure out what I was going to do with life. And, yeah.
So then you jumped in. Before we got talk about the next thing that you do, talk about what lessons did you learn from the Navy and then from your paving company that still kind of resonate with you today?
Yeah, I don't know if I can just point to any like 1 or 2 lessons. I think the biggest thing that the military teaches everybody is you can do it. Like if your body is going to want to quit way before, if your mind lets it, you'll quit.
Right.
It's whether you say you're going to fail or whether you say you succeed, either way you're right.
Yeah.
Right. And so I've always just had that mentality. I remember when I was serving, I was going through some training, and I called my mom and I was like, "I just don't think I can do this." And she was like, "Collin, it's 10 more strokes. Just keep counting to 10. And even if you have to count to 10 100 times, just keep moving, dude."
Yeah.
And she was a tough woman. She was probably the toughest human being I've ever met.
Wow.
And she was the one that always used to tell me, "You got 10 more strokes in you. You have 10 more steps in you. Just keep going."
Yeah.
So that really stuck with me. And in the paving company, there were times where, "Oh, this sucks," or "Oh, this job isn't going right," and you kind of have to quit looking at, through a microscope and start looking at the whole picture, and see that just because one stroke isn't working doesn't mean that your whole painting is screwed up.
Yeah.
Right? So I think those are the lessons I learned.
Awesome. All right. So took a couple years off.
Yep.
What happened next?
Yeah, so I say I took a couple years off, but really I took about 3 months off, and my kids and I had this whack idea. We were making macaroni and cheese. And my son and daughter were playing on this game called Webkins. I was like, "What the heck is that?" They were like, "Well, Dad, you play these games and you get these points, and then you get these little stuffed animals and you can name them and da-da-da." And I was like, that's got to be about the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. And so I asked my son, I was like, "Is this really what you want to play, like this?" And he was like, "No, but there isn't a game that does what I want." I go, "What do you want?" And he said he wanted kind of like, a war game. He was a little kid, he liked playing with guns and stuff. And so I asked my daughter what she liked, and she wanted to weigh like a game she could travel the world. So some friends and I, that a couple of them were in computer programming, I called them, was like, "Hey, I have this idea." And we came up with this idea called, we named it Kid Command. And it was an online virtual world that really got kids traveling the globe and learning about different places and different environments and different ecosystems. But they'd click on it and they would be transported there in their virtual self, right? And it was the coolest platform. Kids just loved it. But the thing is, I think we were, no one wants to say, I don't know, but for lack of better, we were ahead of our time. We were the first mobile game, I think, that was out there. B, we just couldn't compete with the like of the Disneys and the Nickelodeons and things like that. You know, a Nebraska startup, it's tough. You know, anybody that's in the startup or have ever started a business, but this is a very capital intensive business. And so it was humbling because before, the more concrete you pour, the more money you make.
Right.
And I knew a formula. I knew what my margins were.
Right.
Now I was in something where we had raised outside money and money from, you know, hardworking folks that said, hey, we'll invest in this.
Yeah.
And when you see that thing spiraling down, I mean, geez Louise, that was
Stressful.
So we did that for about 4 years, pulled the plug on it. It failed. That's where I say not everybody in the world is my best friend, because I think some people look at me and it's like, you idiot, how could you let that fail? But that was humbling. And talk about some lessons, man. You really find out what you're made of. It's easy to know what you're made of when everything's going right.
Right.
It's when shit's going wrong and your back's against the wall that you really figure out what ingredients are in your internal sauce.
Yeah. And you came out the other side of that happy with what you found? Sometimes?
Yeah, so yes. I mean, now looking back, hell yeah. But I mean, that Kid Command, I didn't know what my next step was.
Right.
So I started doing a little bit of consulting and started working with some other companies, and worked with a larger company that said, hey, with what you know about human behavior and what makes people tick, would you be interested in exploring, you know, what we do? And it was Gallup. And so talked to a couple different companies that they worked with, and one of their CEOs was like, man, if I just had a way to, after Gallup assesses someone's strengths, if I had a way to hold my employees accountable to their strengths, man, it'd be sweet. So I talked to the team that I was working with at Gallup, and they were like, yeah, that's cool, you know, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, do you mind if I build it? And they said no. And so I called that hospital executive and I said, so if this existed, would you buy it? And he was like, absolutely, man.
Yeah.
So here I thought I had hit the jackpot, right? Yeah. So I assemble a team and we start building this platform that we call Amped, and go to get my first contract signed. And I called the guy the night before just to make sure we were still on, and gal at the front desk was like, oh, he's no longer with us. And I was like, what? So I transitioned from, you know, yet another founder of a company to salesperson really quickly.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was a part of my life that I look back and again, you know, I was working in an office that we couldn't afford electricity. So it was dark. It was cold. And my dog at the time, his yellow lab named Jackson. And so Jackson and I walked down the street to the old pub, and I'd grab a water while I plugged my computer in to get it to charge, just so I could Google search hospitals and try to get a meeting. And finally one guy took a meeting. And Aaron, I'll tell you what, that's a tough phone call when a guy says, yeah, I can take your meeting. How about tomorrow at noon? And you're checking Capital One to see if you can even get out there. And lo and behold, I had just enough money to get gas in my Honda Accord to make it out there. And halfway back, I got a phone call and said, hey, we loved your presentation. We like your product. We're in. And I was like, oh, you know, we charge 50% up front, right? So then we were off to the races, man. Yeah. So that's when, but again, the past, I would say 4 or 5 years have been going really pretty good. Obviously everybody has their ups and downs, but very blessed. Business has been going good. And, but I look back and it was those times again that I look back and say, you know, the good times are great, but it's the real shithole times that make you, I mean, there's not a day that goes by that I don't think back to, if you screw this up, this is where you're going to be.
Right.
And remember how bad that sucked.
Right.
Right.
And those kind of down times make the good times so much better.
Yeah. And then you kind of realize too, like, who truly has your back, who your real friends are. But then because we're not expected to go through this life alone. I mean, people struggle. And the problem with society is sometimes it almost feels like when you're down at your lowest, it almost feels like society as a whole almost like puts their foot on your throat and wants to hold you down. Right? Except there's always those people in your life that have their hand out and are saying, hey man, it's still good. Get up.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I always tell my kids is you may think in high school, you know everything, but if you're not taking advantage of every opportunity, if you're not trying your hardest, if you're not pushing yourself in everything you do, man, I tell you what, you're going to leave this house and the world can't wait to bend you over and stick it as deep as they can. And that's gruesome, but that's the truth.
Yep.
And until that resonates, it's like, holy shit, Dad, you were right.
Yeah.
The world doesn't give a shit about your problems, but your friends do.
I think what's great from your story is it's important for people. A lot of people will talk about the grind or the hustle. And, I think I heard something recently about overnight successes are years in the making, right?
Yeah.
And so even those that have been successful, it's easy for us to celebrate the success. Mm-hmm. But most of the time we need people to understand how much work has to go in for you to find even the smallest bit of success, and then kind of extend that year over year, like just consistently showing up, putting in the hard work over and over and over again, and being able to persevere through those really cruddy moments or cruddy months or cruddy years in a row, right? Where it feels like you're never going to break through.
Yeah, I think that eventually everything works if you just keep moving, and people talk about overnight success. You know how like when you get a stuffed up nose and you're really stuffed up and you sleep on this side of the head and it all runs this side,
right? And
then you do that for what feels like 388 days,
right?
That's overnight success.
Yep.
Gosh, that was a great night's sleep, and you look at your spouse and you're like, yeah, that's 100% true.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people don't realize what these, I always look at Tesla, you look at Elon Musk and you hear his story. I think he bankrupted 7 companies before he got one to work, and it happened to be PayPal.
Yeah.
Right.
Got to keep trying.
Got to keep moving.
Yeah. When did you find, so now I'm excited to talk about Old Green Plain. Let's talk about Butch. When did you find, tell us kind of how you rediscovered your playing there.
Yeah, so where was I? You know what? We were at some small town, Nebraska. My son was a wrestler, and, at a wrestling tournament. I don't know if you've ever been to one.
Nope.
But you're on your ass for like 9 hours, and then your son will wrestle for the tops 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And then you're on your ass for another 2 hours, and then so I remember we were in between matches, and my brother called, works for the FAA, and he said, "Dude, you're not going to believe this, but I'm investigating this accident of this 182 that went down." So I started researching 182s in the Midwest, and he said, lo and behold, Dad's airplane is for sale in Indiana.
What?
Yeah, that's what I said. Really? Shit, Brandon, you should buy it. He was like, I'm not going to buy it. You should buy it. Well, I couldn't, at the time I couldn't afford an airplane and stuff. And so I called the people, and the gentleman that had bought it from my father was, unfit to fly anymore. He was older and kind of battling cancer. And so I visited with his wife. And once we swapped stories, she realized, who I was and stuff. She was like, it really needs to be back in your family. And so she really made it so we couldn't not do it.
Yeah.
Very, very awesome to work with. And so we ended up with that plane, had to get it.
Yeah.
Like, sold the vehicle and da-da-da. And, the airplane, whatever. And so anyway, brought it back to Lincoln and put a lot of work into it. And, I was flying Craig that I work with. One day we flew to Norfolk, Nebraska for a burger, and he was like, you know what we should do? We should hook some GoPros up and interview people in this thing and do like a podcast. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. So it was funny because at the time I was working out at CrossFit.
Yeah.
And I told Ronnie my idea, and he was like, oh man, I'll tell you what, do you know that 10 years ago there was like, what did he tell me? As many podcasts start every day today that were in existence 10 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was like, and I said, well, shit, thanks for that poo-poo party.
Yeah. Thanks for the cheery
right?
pep talk.
And so, but I did it. I bought a couple GoPros, and Craig and I talked we talked Aaron Davis into flying with us. And yeah, and so people just started rallying around that fun story of, hey, we found this plane that belonged to my dad that I grew up, getting to fly in as a little kid. And then once he sold it in the mid 70s, I just flew around pretending I was still in that plane, and then to be able to get it. And so people loved that story, and I was lucky enough to, some other companies bought into the story and really help us make this happen. Silverhawk Aviation, they're led by a bunch of passionate pilots that love to spread the good word of aviation. Yeah. So, I mean, I thank heaven above every day for people like them, and Textron, Cessna, and Roro Flicks, all these companies that help us pull this thing off. Yeah. Otherwise we wouldn't be able to do it. And that's how we got started in it. And I tell you what, Aaron, that's a fun outlet. Yeah. I get an outlet in the morning at the gym. My job is just, everybody says, oh my gosh, I love my job so much. But honestly, I really like my job, but I really love the people I do my job with. Yeah. And so that makes it, and then I get to fly. And so that's my passion is my family, friends, and aviation. Flying.
The 3 Fs.
The 3 Fs, man. I think I should try to find a symbol for the 3 Fs.
Fourth F?
Yeah.
The fourth.
Yeah.
So how long ago, because you kind of started Old Green Plane on your own. Mm-hmm. Can you still find those episodes on YouTube?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
The first ones, it's pretty awesome too.
And who did, like, you had just kind of scrapped that together, pieced it together on your own, and found people to edit and that sort of thing, shoot and do editing and things like that?
Yeah, man. Well, we got pretty lucky because, right away we teamed up with, there was a young kid from Union College, Levy, that he was just itching. Like, wait, I get to go fly in an airplane and do what his passion is videography, right? Yeah. And so he helped us. The funny thing is, I go pretty hard. Yeah. I think you know that. Yeah. And so when we'd go on travel on trips, and he'd get Levy, and I think there was nights where he'd be like, holy shit. Like he didn't know if we were going to come, but Levy did a great job. And then, as our idea started getting maybe bigger than we initially thought it would, or maybe bigger than us even. Right. And we started attracting more companies, more sponsors, guests from a little further outside our reach. Sure. It became pretty evident that we needed to kick it up a notch and get more on a maybe a little more disciplined schedule. Yeah. And tone it back. Yeah. And people hear me say we toned it down, but by toning it down, we just got really serious about, hey, listen, if we're really going to fly people in an airplane, if we're really going to get deep into their stories and we're going to take them to cool, we better take this pretty damn serious and figure out who we are. Yeah. And that's really what happened. And again, I thank goodness for great people in my life. One night, it was Mike Gertis and I, from, he works out at the gym, and then Silverhawk, we had lunch, and he said, here's, who do you want to be in 3 years? And if who you want to be doesn't align with where I want to be or where we want to be. Right. He said, nothing personal, but I want to align myself with something that, that is positively affecting others. Right. Yeah. And I'm really grateful for that talk, because all of a sudden I was able to look at what we were doing and say, hey, you know what? He's right. I mean, we need to tone it down. We need to figure out we can be entertaining without having to drop the F-bomb every other, we can be,
Right.
we can go to cool places and meet cool people
Right.
without it having to be a party.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, all we want it to be is we're very passionate pilots and aviators, and we want to introduce everyone we possibly can to aviation.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then what kind of stories are you telling?
Everything. I mean, we tell stories of hardship. We tell stories of celebration. We've our final guest last year was this weekend, this Saturday night. She's running for Mrs. America.
Wow.
Yeah, Dr. Jamie Seaman. She is just a rock star. And you get to fly with someone like that and hear her story. And then she put us through like a little mock-up because she was on the Titan Games. That's why I'm back at the gym, because I did about a 30-second Titan game, and I was like, oh, yeah, I better do something about this. Yeah.
Oh, man. You've got a small group that you're working out with right now.
Uh-huh.
You got Jeremy.
Yep.
My boy Jeremy.
Yep.
Scotty. And tell us a little bit about that. Like Austin's kicking your butt.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's pretty fun because Jeremy and I were in the large group.
Yeah.
And I always loved it. But then when COVID hit and, we kind of had to disperse a little bit. And I kept up on a few workouts. But then when things started to figure out, when we started to figure out as a gym and as a society and that we can work out if we're socially distanced and you guys do an amazing job cleaning and disinfecting. But anyway, so I knew I wanted to come back, but I came back, but I wasn't getting like everything personally that I needed out of it.
Right.
I guess I like to work out in smaller groups.
Yeah.
It pushes me better.
Yeah.
And I tend to perform better when I have like a relationship or, a reason to push that person.
Right.
I don't ever want to let them down. So I reached out to Jeremy and he said, "Nah, man, I'm not really interested." I said, "Well, what if we could do private classes?" And he was like, "I can't afford private classes." And then when I visited with you and you were like, "Well, here's how much it is with group. Here's how much it was for private." For the additional money for private, it was worth it to me.
Yeah.
So Jeremy and I worked out for a while together, and it was pretty awesome because it was just me and him and Austin.
Yeah.
And Austin's got to walk away from us every day just shaking his head and scratching his head like, really, this is what's going to happen to me when I'm pushing 50 years old? Because, geez, the things we say, oh, my God, my back. And, we get new medication or whatever. And, but then we were sitting at my shop one night having a cocktail with Scotty, and he was saying, "Guys, I can't do this because I just got diagnosed with diabetes and they're going to put me on this medication."
Yep.
My wife happened to walk by and she said, "Scott, before they start pumping you full of meds, why don't you try a lifestyle change? Why don't you try working out?" And I told him, I said, "Well, here's how much we pay to go to the gym." And he said, "Oh, man." And his wife, at first was like, "We can't afford, we're not going to spend that kind of money."
Yeah.
I say, "Man, spend a couple $100 a month going to the gym or spend $500 on updated meds. It's up to you."
Right.
And he was like, "All right, I'll give it a try once." I'll give it a try. And I'll tell you the thing, and you know this, Perky Powell, and you know this, Levi, but the hardest part about CrossFit is getting your ass out of bed and walking through those doors.
Yeah, 100%.
And once you get through those doors and all of a sudden you're moving, an object in motion stays in motion, right?
That's right.
Yeah, dang right, I'm right, because that's Newton's first law. And so once he realized that, man, he was hooked. I mean, Scott was hook, line, and sinker. And then with him joining, now it's just one more voice, because it used to be, "Hey, Jeremy, I didn't sleep very well last night. Do you want to skip?" And there's days where he says, "Hell no, get your butt up and let's go." And then there's days where, "Hey, Collin, I'm going to skip." "Oh, okay, whatever." Or I'll say, "Hell no, let's go," right? But now we have one more that jumps in the mix, and it's kind of our little cheer squad.
Yeah, can't let each other down.
Like this morning on the text, Scott was like, "I don't think I'm going to go this morning, fellas." And I was like, "Too late, Jack. I'm sitting in front of your house." I wasn't. But
he's still in bed, so it gives you time to get there.
Yep. So he popped up and he was like, "Oh gosh, fellas, I really didn't want to come to this." And so we waited before we were at Highway 2 and 84th to tell him, "Man, you should have taken a day off because you're about to get your ass kicked." Because that open workout this morning was a grinder. Yeah.
Oh man. How is flying consistently and working out consistently, how have they benefit each other? How has it changed? You know, because you get such a high when you're flying that you took me out in dock and put us down on a sandbar. That was awesome.
Yeah.
But I could just tell, like, you're like a little kid, right? Like, you're just so pumped.
Yeah.
And then I see you when you're leaving the gym and you're tired and exhausted, but man, you feel good because you showed up.
Yeah.
How is that carried over? How have those two things kind of carried over into the rest of your life?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I could join a gym and do a regular class or whatever, and I've done that, and it just hasn't been, there for me really. You know what I mean by there for me? When you're in the right place, right? So, but I always heard the stigma of CrossFit, it's hard on your body, it's hard on that. But to answer your question, for me with CrossFit, every time I leave that gym, I literally look at Scott and Jeremy and I say, the rest of our day is going to be easy.
Yeah.
If we just did that and we didn't quit, the rest of it's easy.
Yeah.
And kind of the same with flying. Like, I'm always on when I'm in an airplane. I'm never not on.
Yeah.
And when you land, a lot of times, a few hours later, you're exhausted. And that's another reason I wanted to get back into CrossFit, is because my energy levels when I'm working out, it just sustains me through the day. And I always, even though I slip on my diet, I always kind of remind myself I'm about ready to screw up, that you work that damn hard and now you're going to ruin it with this now.
Yeah.
So once I started working out again, all of a sudden, I don't get tired after I fly anymore. I don't get tired at work anymore. Not to say that by the end of the day I'm not exhausted.
Right.
But my energy levels have just, and I think that anything I can do to get me more energy to fly, I'm in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. You going to get Jeremy to get his pilot's license?
You know what? I tell you, yes, I am, because that dude, and Scott, Scott's a pilot.
Really?
Yeah. He let his ticket lapse. He actually was the last guy to fly. He and I, the last time I got to fly with my dad, it was me, him, and Scott. And but Jeremy, yes, he is going to get his license, that turd bird, because he loves to fly, and he's always like, "Hey man, when are you going flying next?" Yeah. I always feel like saying, "Hey man, it's time for you to buy your own goddamn seat." So he, I think hopefully within the next year he commits to starting, because really, aviation, becoming a pilot, is the same thing as deciding to go to work, deciding to go to gym. As soon as you go and start taking flight lessons, if you at all are into aviation, you're going to catch that bug, and you're going to realize there's no greater feeling. Yeah. The second day I was in CrossFit, and this was 2 years ago? Yeah. I met Paul Seeger. Yeah. And he said, "Man, I saw you out the airport. Are you a pilot?" And I said, "Yeah, I am. Why are you?" Yeah. "No, I'm a student pilot." Yeah. Now that dude's IFR, owns a plane. Yeah. I mean, you get the bug, and you get the bug.
Catch it hard.
Catch it hard.
Same thing happens with CrossFit.
Same thing happens with CrossFit, man. You do. You feel
if you
like
do it right.
You feel like a slug. It's funny because I'm at the point now, I'm not a true CrossFitter by any stretch of the words, but I do. There's mornings where if I think I'm going to take the morning off, I can't sleep. And it's like, God damn, fuck. This is the power the gym has over me, right? Yeah. And it's not just that I miss the workout. I miss the people. Yeah. Because you're just not going to find a more motivated and motivating group of people. Yeah.
Man, I appreciate you coming to share with us. Yeah. Spend some time. Who do you need to give a shout out to? I know you talked about some of your sponsors. You got any other sponsors? Everybody needs to go out and download Carbon TV. Yeah, Carbon and watch TV. Old Green Plan. You finished season 3?
No, we just finished season 2 officially. And we might have some pretty big news coming up about maybe a possible move even out of just the digital space. So that'll be coming down the pipe. But sweet. Carbon TV and YouTube right now. Yeah, I mean, I list the people that make it possible. We had, Silverhawk, you got Cessna Textron, Flight Flicks, the Nebraska College System, Row Flicks, we just couldn't do this without and really it's a couple guys with a GoPro and some real fancy equipment. I mean, geez Louise, Levi jumps in that plane with a suitcase, and I go to toss it like I do a 45-pound weight, which you don't do, by the way. But he's like, hey, whoa, it's and so now we have precious cargo in there. But no, I mean, it's a group of guys going out and having a ball, and then hearing people's stories, right?
Yeah.
So people get that, and so I mean, I owe it to everybody that watches us and cheers us on.
Thanks to Angie,
yeah,
for letting you fly all the time.
Yeah,
supporting you to fly all the time.
I think that's one of those things where
she wants you to fly all the time.
She does, because she knows that, like, that flying fulfills me so much that she can almost tell when I'm having a rough day at work or something. She's like, you know what you should do before you come and unload your burdens on me? Maybe you should go jump in your plane and fly for a bit and then come home a better man. I mean, she knows me. So it's a lot of guys golf, a lot of guys fish, a lot of guys, you name it.
Yep.
My outlet's aviation. My outlet's flying.
It's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Awesome. Go check out Carbon TV or YouTube. Subscribe to Old Green Plane.
Yep.
And I've listened. I haven't watched all the episodes yet, but the ones I've had, man, just a cool story. I loved when you got to go see Craig's sister in, was it Boulder you guys were at?
Colorado Springs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it was CSU.
Yeah. It was
the campus.
Yep.
Yeah, you were there. How do I remember this better than you?
Because well, Levi, how does he remember it better than me?
We all know. We all know why.
We got there. We were supposed to be in Spanish Fork, Utah, and wind grounded us.
Yeah.
And when you can't fly for a couple days and you're in Cheyenne, Wyoming, you find stuff to do. So yeah.
Awesome. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, Lincoln Nutrition and Fitness, or you can check out our podcast on iTunes or on Spotify. Thanks again, Collin, for spending time with us.
Yeah, man.
We'll see everybody next time.
All right.